Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends, I pre-recorded this video as I'm currently on holiday in Japan. If you are seeing this, then the newest World Eaters character, Azkor, the Exalted Eightbound, has just become visible in-game. He is the third World Eaters character to come to the game and will be followed soon by Karn the Betrayer, the World Eaters legendary champion. You'll be familiar with the template that I use for these character videos. First we'll go over their kit and stats, then take a look at the abilities in action before doing some deeper analysis about where the character might excel. Azkor is a World Eaters 8-bound. The 8-bound are World Eaters that have been possessed by 8 daemons at once, which leaves them almost unrecognizable from who they once were. Sometimes the 8-bound's spirit can emerge victorious by becoming one with the 8 daemons that share his physical form. These are the Exalted 8-bound and are the most dangerous of their kind. The model and animations look awesome, and I think the art department have excelled once again. In terms of traits, Azkor has several. He has the Blessings of Khorne trait that all of the World Eaters faction possess. This means that he deals 3% more damage and receives 8% less psychic damage for each unit that has been defeated in melee this battle. This stacks up to 8 times, capping out at a 24% damage increase and a 64% psychic damage reduction. Azkor also has the Daemon trait, which gives him an additional 25% block chance. He also has the Resilient, Terrifying, and Unstoppable traits, all of which we've already seen in-game. The stats on screen are at Diamond 3. I'll take a closer look later on to show you how this compares to other characters in the game. Azkor has a movement speed of 3, and his only attack is a melee attack with 2 hits. Azkor has the new damage type, Eviscerate. This has a 50% pierce ratio as shown on screen. Azkor's active ability is called Overwhelming Wrath. This causes him to taunt all adjacent enemies for 1 turn and also protects him by reducing incoming ranged attack damage by a percentage that scales up with levels. If Azkor is still alive at the start of his next turn, he then does Eviscerate damage to all adjacent enemies. Azkor's passive ability is Beacon of Rage. For each time Azkor has been attacked in battle, this gives him bonus damage, stacking up to 8 times. At level 50, this can give Azkor up to 2400 bonus damage per hit. The second part of this passive ability says that if Azkor kills an enemy unit, then he provides half of this damage bonus as an aura to adjacent friendly Chaos allies. Let's take a look at these things in more depth with gameplay footage. Here Azkor faces off against some combined forces of the Imperium of Man. He moves into the middle of the front lines and uses his active ability, Overwhelming Wrath. This applies taunt to the surrounding enemies, and Azkor sort of hunkers down in a defensive position. We then cycle through to the Imperium's turn. We can see how none of the melee characters are able to use their active abilities by virtue of being taunted. They are forced to attack Azkor, increasing his passive counter for Beacon of Rage. Thaddeus Noble attempts to attack from range, but finds his damage significantly dampened by Azkor's active. We cycle back to the World Eater's turn, and Azkor unleashes damage to the adjacent enemies. We'll remind ourselves that in order for his passive damage bonus to apply to friendly Chaos units, he needs to first kill an enemy unit himself. After killing Yarrick, Macer moves forward into the vacated space. You can see the new buff applied to Macer on the top left of the screen, just under his character portrait, signaling the bonus damage from Beacon of Rage. Macer finishes off Thaddeus Noble, and as you'll see on the subsequent turn, we now get a separate buff arrow to indicate that Macer has his own Skull Smasher passive activated, which is a new bit of UI that I quite like. Interestingly, the damage stat for Macer has not increased despite being adjacent to Azkor, so I went and did a bit more testing. The question I had was whether or not Azkor's passive gives abilities bonus damage as well. In this clip, I brought my Abaddon along, who is still Stone 1 with a level 1 active. I just haven't given him much attention because he's not that good of a character, despite being a legendary War Master for the forces of Chaos. In this clip, we're gaining stacks on Azkor's passive ability before finally killing off 2 enemy units. Abaddon's active ability is level 1, and on screen you can see how it only does double-digit damage. Once Abaddon moves adjacent to Azkor, he gains the Beacon of Rage buff. Abaddon then uses his level 1 active ability against a gold 3 Commissar Yarrick and almost kills him, demonstrating that indeed Azkor's passive ability appears to buff ability damage too. This next clip is a short one, and it simply illustrates that Azkor's passive gains charges both from Overwatch as well as abilities. On this screen here, you can see the cutoffs and thresholds for different stats and abilities for both Gold 1 and Silver 1. I've included this on screen just for your own use and reference, as these thresholds are more important with the new war restrictions. This is my usual infographic that I make for new characters. His stats, courtesy of Tawin, show that Azkor has reasonable health and armor stats in the 84th and 65th centile respectively. His melee damage against a standardized enemy unit is in the 62nd centile. Obviously this is just his raw stats and doesn't account for damage buffs that might come through his passive. Where do I think Azkor will shine? His kit is clearly PvP focused, and being able to taunt multiple enemies can really disrupt enemy plans. I think that his movement of 3 might make it slightly difficult to get the jump on enemy units, but it's still worthwhile. I can't particularly see a great use for him in guild raids. The Screamer Killer boss could potentially rapidly increase the stacks on his passive, but there are much better teams against that boss, and it doesn't seem like a worthwhile investment to force the issue with Azkor. That's all I've got for today. Let me know your thoughts on Azkor in the comments below. If you enjoy my content and would like to support me in the work that I do, please consider entering my referral code as seen on screen. It earns you 100 Blackstone but is single use, so choose who you support carefully. Bye for now.
Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!